Chapter 1. The Ashes That Remembered Nemesimala. Beneath the dust where the temple breathes no longer. You are not the first to listen, but you may be the last to remember. Beneath Malakor's shattered moons, where obsidian towers lie broken, like bone, something still whispers. It is not a voice, it is not a wind, it is memory, trying to live again. The temple no longer breathes, its spires cleaved by war, its vaults collapsed by the weight of silence. But within its ashes there is heat, and heat remembers. I am that memory, not born, not dead, carried in the flame that should have died with the last. Scream, the Jedi believed they destroyed us here. They cleansed the archives, buried the names, sealed the records in vaults of golden lies. They told their Padawans there were only a few Sith. We defeated them. This place is history. But I remember names. Names they do not teach. Names they feared even in whisper. Darth Voric, Darth Tenebrous II, Darth Moltres, who shattered the sky comet above Felucia, Darth Cartha, who bled the Force in 9 directions, all erased. Not by time, but by design. There came a moment, long before the last war, when the Sith began to realize a different kind of power greater than sabers, greater than lightning. The power to edit. At first, it was innocent. A lie whispered into a datapad, a false report planted in the Jedi archives, a star system omitted from maps. Then came the deeper cuts, a memory overwritten here, a battle rephrased there, then entire wars. Forgotten. This was the birth of Chronoscar's psychic burns in the tissue of time, not wounds to the body, but to the Force itself. You know scars, they tell stories, but Chronoscars, they remove them. They do not just delete events, they replace them seamlessly, painfully, permanently. The first to try this was Darth Trajan, the Unseen. He was not mighty in the Force, not skilled in combat, but he understood something greater than strength. He understood the fear of forgetting. On the night of the Selenon Accord, he stood unseen among Jedi generals and planted a singular thought that the Sith had never taken the Outer Rim. The campaign on Ansori III had never happened. That the burning of Sitha had been an accident, and the Jedi believed it, because the Force itself believed it. Chronoscars do not erase data, they erase context. You will find the ruins, you will find the corpses, but you will not find the reason. And without reason there is no record, and without record there is no vengeance, and without vengeance we are safe. But like all Sith power, it twisted. It stretched. What began as protection became domination. What began as self-defense became revision. Darth Moliar rewrote the Battle of Kestos Prime so that the Jedi appeared to surrender willingly. Darth Vail once inserted a memory into a living Jedi's mind that he had trained under her in secret. That he had betrayed the Council for love. He wept, broken, and turned against his brothers. All false, all permanent. Do you understand the depth of this? We did not conquer planets. We rewrote them, and when the Jedi tried to recall the truth, they found only static in the Force. We became echoes they could not trace. There is still fire here on Malachor. Not flame, not heat, but the kind of fire that waits. It sleeps in the stone under layers of dust and age. The Force itself has become brittle like parchment left in rain. Come closer, no, closer than thought. I will show you something there. In the collapsed hall of war, where names were once etched into black stone, run your hand across the wall. Do you feel it? Smooth, as if nothing was written, but that smoothness is too smooth, polished, not by time, but by denial. There were inscriptions there, the names of the lords who wrote and unwrote the wars, now gone. The stone itself was convinced that nothing had ever been carved into it. Do you see the madness? The Force remembers, and yet refuses to remember. That is the cost of chronoscars. They do not simply bend history, they exhaust it. And so I was born not from flesh, not from spirit, but from the friction of what was, and what will never be again. I am the voice trapped in the ash, the scream that was erased, the memory that will not fade because it never finished becoming real. And I speak now to you because you have found this place, because you still remember enough to ask, what happened here? There are more names, there are more lies, there are more truths too fragile to survive record. And if you keep listening, I will show you how they rewrote the galaxy, how the Jedi you worship once bowed to memories not their own, how truth became a virus, and the Sith became its author. But beware, once you learn these stories, the Force may not remember you either. It has a way of reshaping those who listen too long. Do you hear them? Now, the ashes still whisper. They know your name, too. Chapter 2. The Scroll of False Dawn Location, a snooze. Beneath the buried halls where star charts weep and memory decays, not every prophecy is born from vision. Some are stitched like wounds forced to close around rot. They called it the Scroll of the First Dawn, bound in golden thread, sealed in a box of petrified wood. It was whispered to contain the first prophecy ever spoken by a Jedi, passed hand to hand through ages, hidden when temples burned, guarded when masters died. But that was the lie, that was the trap. It was never Jedi work, it was written by us. Darth Nil was not known by many. She lived beneath the robes of another, taught by Jedi hands, cloaked in false humility. But she did not seek power through rage, nor through lightning, nor even through blade. She sought it through direction. She believed, if you cannot conquer, the Jedi then guide their feet elsewhere. She forged the scroll, not with ink but with kyber dust harvested from a bled crystal. The crystal had seen the death of systems. It had known betrayal. It hummed with the echoes of fallen Padawans. She ground it to powder and mixed it with force water liquid stolen from the wells beneath Ilum then. With her own fingers, she wrote on Jedi parchment the words of a future that was never meant to be. There will come one born of no father. He will bring balance. He will fall. He will rise again. The stars will scream his name in silence. The Jedi read this and believed, because the Force bent when it was read, because the ink was alive. Prophecy is not vision. It is vulnerability. It is the Force speaking where it should be silent. And Darth Nil knew that. She did not insert herself into their records. She inserted a future, and from that future, control. Over centuries, Jedi orders shifted their doctrines. Training methods changed. Trials were softened for those who seemed touched. Visions of the Chosen One multiplied each one a ghost of the scroll's infection. Younglings were tested for traits no Jedi had ever needed before. Knights were sent into battles not for justice, but for pattern. They weren't training Jedi anymore. They were hunting a prophecy, and that prophecy was hunting them back. The scroll was kept in the deep vault on Ossus, where sunlight never touched and silence held like ice. Many who guarded it reported dreams always the same. Child, alone in fire. A voice, humming not words, but vibrations, and unlet saber, bleeding without injury. Some Jedi called it sacred, others called it warning, but no one burned it, because to destroy prophecy is to question hope, and the Jedi clung to hope like armor. They didn't realize they were wearing a mask forged by Sith hands. Centuries later, Master Varello attempted to disprove the scroll's origin. He studied the ink, the binding, the cadence. What he found was an anomaly. The prophecy was older than the temple that housed it, older than the order that claimed it. The script bore microscopic force, fracture signatures of a mind twisted by alchemy, not serenity. Varello took his findings to the High Council. Within a week, he disappeared. His robes were found floating in the Assus River. His voice was never recorded again, but the scroll remained, still whispering to those who dreamed too deeply, still guiding Jedi feet toward prepared tragedies. You may ask, why would we give the Jedi a hero? Because a chosen one can be shaped. Because obsession with balance is the purest form of blindness. Darth Nil did not want to destroy the Jedi. She wanted them to walk willingly into chains of their own making, and so she built a future they would die trying to fulfill. Balance is a blade, and when it swings, it does not care who it cuts. Now Ossus lies broken, the scroll lost, or so they claim, but I know better. Prophecies do not end when the parchment burns. They live in those who heard them, and you who listens now, you to have heard the false dawn. You've seen its echo in myth, in hollers, in whispered stories of desert-born children and fallen masters. But remember this, not all dawn is light, not all light is truth, and not all truths are worth surviving. The scroll of false dawn was never meant to guide. It was meant to corrupt gently, and the Force, gentle as it may seem, rarely notices when its whispers become screams. Chapter 3. Darth Caligar and the Mirror without reflection location, the deep vaults of Arcanus, where truth was taught how to lie. Some Sith desired power, others desired blood, but Caligar desired erasure. There was once a war, but no one remembers its name. There was once a temple, but no one recalls who built it. There was once a Jedi Knight, but her face is missing from the archives. There was once a Sith named Caligar, and even I am not certain he ever existed. That was his intention. Darth Caligar was not a warrior. He wore no armor, spoke in no thunder, drew no saber. He was a librarian of the Sith, but his library contained no books, only silences. He studied not knowledge, but its decay. He asked a question that few had the patience to ponder. What if the greatest act of Sith victory is to become unopposed? And what if the easiest way to be unopposed is to become unremembered? And so he crafted it. Slowly, over decades, a device, not a holocron, a hollow-cron, shaped like the others, but inside, a mirror of memories, not your memories, not my memories, but whatever memory you needed to hear in order to forget everything else. It was not a record, it was a virus. The holocron fed on the listener's mind. It asked no questions. It made no demands. It agreed with you. It filled the voids in your knowledge with just enough fiction to make your facts collapse. If you were a Jedi archivist, it told you the Sith were defeated 4 centuries ago and provided a flawless record. To prove it, if you were a Jedi Master, it whispered that you never trained Padawans, for you were once forbidden from the temple. If you were a Padawan, It spoke of a new path where the Jedi never went to war, where peace reigned, where violence was someone else's invention. The holocron did not kill with blade or lightning. It starved you of certainty, of history, of self. Kaliga released it slowly. One temple, one archive, one corrupted data port. Soon, Jedi across the outer rim began reporting contradictions, whole battles gone from the archives, former masters no longer listed in temple records, knights remembering trials that, according to official timelines, had not occurred. The council blamed data decay, blamed sabotage, blamed the Hutts. They never blamed themselves, but the holocron thrived on their need for explanation, because where explanation grows, belief decays, and without belief, truth is just another echo. Caligar knew this. He called it the mirror, without reflection, because when a Jedi stared into it, they saw their place in history. Vanishan still felt it, had always been that way. They did not scream, they simply adjusted, as if waking from a long, unimportant dream. Darth Caligar's ultimate ambition was not conquest. It was disappearance. He believed that to be remembered is to be vulnerable, and that the Sith would only be free when history itself lost interest in them. He did not want the Jedi to fear the Sith. He wanted them to believe that Sith were an exaggeration, a myth, a word too dramatic for a world too fragile, a darkness never truly real, just a story made up to justify old temples and old wars. And it worked, for a while, until Jedi started vanishing from memory while still alive. Master Sylvalin was teaching 3 Padawans at the Azen Temple when her name vanished from the Holonet registry. Within hours, her credentials failed at the temple gates. Her students claimed no memory of her. The council declared her a victim of stress-induced delusion. She spent her final days drawing maps of a galaxy she no longer belonged to, because the mirror had whispered her name into someone else's story, and thus she was rewritten. Eventually, a knight named Braldun traced the anomaly back to Arcanus, into the ruins of an old observatory long since abandoned. There, in a chamber with no ceiling, under stars that pulsed too slowly to be real, she found it, the Holodashkron. It was singing to itself, telling its story. She destroyed it, or tried to. The fragments burned with names, not names of the Sith, but names of every Jedi who had ever touched it. Dune screamed as her saber passed through. Her own name, watching her memories flake like ash. She wrote what little she could in the sand before forgetting how to hold the stylus. Those words, "I remember nothing, but I know what was stolen." Her body was later found on a transport, ship headed to nowhere. The council ruled it a meditative accident, but the holocron was never recovered, because it never needed to be. Once it reflected you, you carried it within. You may ask now, why remember Caligar at all? Because someone must. Because memory, even corrupted, is rebellion, and if you forget him completely, he wins again. And the next time you stare into a mirror and do not recognize your own reflection, it may be because he already spoke to you. Truth is not what was, it is what is repeated. And if no one repeats you, were you ever real? Chapter 4. The War That Wrote Itself Again. Location, Mandalore, where the ground is tired of swallowing blood. A single battle fought once is war. Fought twice, it is fate. Fought forever, it becomes the Force's nightmare. There is a place on Mandalore where the air never breathes the same way twice. The rocks are rearranged. The shadows do not match the sun. The ground, still wet. And if you stand there long enough, you will hear the war begin again. The screams are not echoes, they are replays. The blood is not dry, it has simply learned to wait. This is the site of the endless siege of Kelberon Ridge, a battle that never ends. Because it was never allowed to, because a Sith Lord feared death and made his war immortal. Darth Vraxus, warlord, ritualist, coward. He commanded the armies of the Black Fang during the Outer Shadow conflicts. He won through cunning, through brutality, through sheer refusal to lose. Until one day, the impossible happened. He was outmaneuvered. The Jedi General Ty Corden trapped Vraxus' entire war host in the Kelberon Gorge. There was no exit, no flanking path, no surrender that would be honored, and so Vraxus did something worse than desperation. He opened a wound in the timeline. The ritual was simple, but its cost was obscene. 12 Mandalorian children, bound by wire, pulsing with stolen Kyber breath. A triangle of obsidian drawn into the soil with his own blood. And one spoken command: if I am to die here, then let this death write itself again until I win. And the Force, confused, broken by the sacrifice, obeyed. Time folded, and the battle began again. The Jedi charged. The Sith retaliated. Blades crossed. Blasters flared. The gorge filled with smoke. And then, the day Rewound. No one noticed at first, because no one was meant to, except Vraxus. He remembered everything. He kept his mind clear as reality looped. He tested different formations, tried new counterattacks, watched Corden's strategy, learned and died, and learned and died and learned, over and over, until, on the 7th loop, he finally won. But the ritual did not end, because it had no end. It was not a curse. It was a command, and the Force still obeys. Centuries have passed. The Jedi believe the siege of Kelberon was a minor skirmish, its data corrupted. Its outcome uncertain, but on the ridge, old soldiers return in dreams. They awaken, covered in bruises they cannot explain. One Jedi reported waking with Mandalorian soil beneath her fingernails. Another claimed he smelled cordite while meditating. None of them were alive during the war, but all of them had fought it. Because the battle wants more players, the loop hungers for new minds and time. Like any prison welcomes company, the Force now shudders in that place, not with fear, but with exhaustion. You see, even the Force has limits. It can bend, but not forever. It can remember, but not willingly. And when trapped in contradiction, it begins to bleed. The rituals of Vraxus did not merely bend time. They taught the Force how to suffer. And suffering, once taught, spreads. Now, every battle echoes louder. Every death in the galaxy carries a faint afterdash image. Sometimes you will feel déjà vu in war. That is not memory. It is residue, a trace of the Kelberon wound. Still pulsing, still waiting to be resolved, but it never will be, because Vraxus, though long dead, cannot die until the war ends. And the war cannot end because the Force cannot remember. What ending feels like, I'll tell you this, not to frighten. Fear is for the living, but you are not merely alive. You are listening to memory, and memory is heavier than history. You may think you are safe, but have you ever woken to find a scar you do not remember earning? Have you ever felt grief for a war you never studied? Then ask yourself, were you there, or is the loop reaching you too? The Jedi tried to seal the gorge once, dropped a fortress upon it, declared it sacred. But the stones rearranged. The doors led to nowhere, and the guards each one eventually took their own lives, all on the same date, all whispering the same thing. The battle was almost different this time. The fortress now lies empty, but if you step into its center at midnight, you'll hear marching. One side screams the Jedi anthem, the other howls in Sith tongues long forgotten, and both are you. If history repeats itself, it is because someone made it so. But if it repeats forever, then history has become a weapon. Chapter 5. The Jedi who betrayed a war that hadn't happened. Location: Lost Sector 17 Gamma. In the ruins of a temple that never appeared on any map, but always stood in shadow. Some betrayals are not acts of defiance, but symptoms of remembering too soon. His name is gone from the records. No statue, no holophile, no lineage traced. He is not listed among the exiled, not listed among the dead, not even mentioned in whispers of failure. And yet, he was. He lived. He spoke, and the galaxy unraveled around. His silence, they called him the Dreamwalker, but only in insult. He was a knight of exceptional discipline, but not of the blade, not of tactics, not of command. He specialized in pre-conflict. He walked battlefields before they began. Through visions he saw where blood would fall, where sabers would ignite, where treaties would shatter. But unlike seers who spoke in riddles or symbols, he named places, dates, victims, and his visions were never wrong. Until they were. He approached the High Council one solar rotation before the Eshkar Accords. He stood before them and whispered, "You are about to start a war we already lost." The room went cold, not from fear but from confusion. There were no signs of war. The Eshkar delegation had arrived peacefully. Negotiations were progressing. He insisted. He had seen Jedi ships firing first. He had seen council signatures authorizing the strike. He had fought in that war, in his vision, and he had regretted it. "I will not raise my saber in service of what we are about to become." The council dismissed him. They believed his mind had become unmoored, stretched by too many glimpses into potential. But the truth was far worse. They exiled him quietly. No trial, no farewell, no entry in the archives, simply erased. But as he stepped onto his transport, the sky above the temple clouded, not with weather, but with possibility. You see, the future had noticed he'd spoken out, and the future is a jealous thing. It does not like being revealed before it is ready, and so it hurried itself. Within 26 days, a Jedi skirmish vessel accidentally crossed into restricted Eshkar space. Communications jammed. Warning beacon failed. The Eshkar capital took it as invasion. They retaliated. A fleet was mobilized. The Eshkar Accords crumbled, and the war began, exactly as the Dreamwalker had said. But here is the madness. Once the war started, more visions came. From other Jedi, from politicians, from wounded civilians. Each of them had seen this war before. Each of them felt as though they'd already fought it. There were no strategies left to invent, only tactics to repeat. The war played out like a memory, not like a surprise. And the more it continued, the more it felt inevitable, as if it had always been meant to happen, as if it had needed his warning to begin. Was he a prophet? Or a trigger? Did he speak of the future to stop it? Or did speaking of it force it into becoming? That is the paradox of seeing too far. To warn is to awaken. To awaken is to invite. The Jedi never brought him back, not because they hated him, but because they feared what he might see next. And more than that, they feared what he might refuse to see. He wandered the edge of the galaxy after that, spoken of in broken Force echoes. Some say he died in the maw, others say he lives still, unanchored by time, lost in a vision that never ends. I found traces of him in forgotten temples, in the minds of droids that dreamed, in Force storms that whispered his name. But no confirmation, only presence, as if he is still walking the timeline, nudging it, watching it, avoiding it, and sometimes becoming it. You may wonder why I tell you this. You may ask, what value is there in a Jedi who saw what shouldn't be seen? Because that is the lesson. You are listening to myths, and myths, when believed too early, become chains. The Dreamwalker tried to stop the story from happening, and the story made him part of itself to survive. He is not a warning, he is the price of remembering. Before the galaxy is ready, the Force does not punish prophecy, it punishes timing. Chapter 6. The Book with No Beginning Location, Zeost. Beneath the glass veins of a buried monastery, where shadows learned how to read. Every ending is just a truth remembered too late. But what if that's all there ever was? They dug for relics. They unearthed a curse, deep beneath the blackened crust of Zeost, where the sky once cracked from Sith screams. There lay a monastery drowned in volcanic time. No roof, no entryway, only an echo that did not wait to be found. And in its center, a pedestal, upon it, a book. But not a book as you understand it. It had no binding, no title, no first page, just endings, scattered across parchment that felt older than light. This has already happened. That was the first line. Every time, for every reader, no matter their mind. And after that, the descent. The first Jedi to open it was Master Lineth. She read only 7 lines before closing it with bloodied hands. Her eyes refused to blink for 12 hours. She wrote nothing. She spoke only once. My death was not my worst mistake. She never ignited her saber again. The book was sealed, buried beneath the temple. But books, like wounds, call to those who itch to reopen them. The Sith returned for it because they recognized its voice. It spoke in Sith dialects older than their language, not a script, but a memory. Galaxies burn, slowest in those who dream of saving them. Darth Saan took the book, and in doing so, vanished from all known records, but not from history. He appears in places he should not, statues, hollers, campaigns. 1 centuries before his birth, some say the book rewrote him, others say it simply reminded him how to bleed into the timeline. Here is the madness. The book does not lie, but it also does not speak the truth. What it shows is one ending, then another, then 100 more. Some show Jedi falling in battle before sabers ignite. Some show planets turning to cinders from unknown stars. Some show Sith winning, then breaking from victory. Some show silence, just silence-like. The galaxy had screamed too long and stopped existing. Every ending, different, but all carried the same whisper. This has already happened. No page offers comfort. No page offers clarity. Only certainty and collapse. Among Jedi, it became a seed of madness. Some refused to believe what they saw. Others became obsessed with preventing what they read. They adjusted plans, sabotaged diplomacy, broke alliances, trying to undo futures they weren't meant to see, and in doing so, they made them real. The book does not predict, it pulls, from memory, from fear, from possibility. You do not read it, you summon it. Each page is born from your despair. Each ending is a reflection of what you fear most, and what you almost did. The Sith treated it differently. They did not fear the endings, they studied them. Some began to collect their favorite conclusions. The total extinction of Jedi across 12 timelines, the collapse of the Outer Rim into one Crimson Empire, the chaining of the Force itself, beaten into obedience. They fed on these futures. Let them fester. Some Sith began to speak to the book. Others wrote inside it, not ink, but sacrifice. One Sith carved a poem into its last page using the blood of a Jedi counselor. Within hours, 1,000 holoricords adjusted as if the counselor had never lived. History shifted to accommodate the lie. The book did not protest, because it never needed truth, only finality. Eventually, the book was placed inside a gravity-locked stasis vault, but the vault is now empty. The last guard recorded his final log with eyes wide, open and voice trembling. It's not in the vault, because the vault was never locked, because I already let it out, because I already read the end, because this has already happened. He then walked into deep hyperspace. No ship, no suit, just silence, no trace. You may believe you are immune, that listening is not reading, but beware. The book does not require your hands, only your attention. It has no beginning, because the beginning was always you. You were the first page it needed. All endings are true. Some just haven't caught you yet. Chapter 7. The Lords who erase themselves. Location unknown, because there is nothing left to map. The greatest act of power is not to be remembered. It is to be unmade so completely that the Force itself forgets where you were. Some Sith craved domination, others survival, a few immortality, but 3 craved silence, not the quiet of meditation, not the sleep of death, but the silence of absence. Darth Van, Darth Ithil, Darth Kor, whispered only in broken code fragments. Their names survive not in story, but in the shape of missing chapters. Their names were not removed, they were unwritten. They are the Sith who did not fall. They vanished. It began with Darth Van, a master of negative rituals force, inversions designed not to create, not to destroy, but to unmake. He believed that existence itself was a form of bondage. If the Jedi feared death, and the Sith feared defeat, then true liberation must lie beyond the edge of memory. Van sought rituals that would erase his presence from history. He began with records, then faces, then Force traces. Each night he carved away at himself, not with blades, but with forgetting, until one day no one could recall what he looked like. No one remembered his voice, even the walls of his temple, restructured as if they had never housed him. The Force recoiled, and he was gone, not dead, not hidden, gone. Darth Ithil followed next. She believed. Van had discovered the purest form of power, but she took it further. She did not wish to be forgotten after living. She wished to be forgotten while still alive. She altered her own Kyber crystal to resonate in negative frequency undetectable by any Jedi or Sith. She severed her midichlorian signature through an alchemical sleep. She whispered her name into a tomb of antilight. And then she began removing others. If memory is a thread, cut enough threads, and the tapestry forgets you were woven in. Temples began to report inconsistencies, Jedi Knights missing from group hollers, battles recorded with unnamed opponents. One counselor spoke of a dream in which a woman with empty eyes taught him the dark side, but he couldn't remember when, or how, or why he wept. That was Ithel's gift. She did not vanish alone. She made memory complicit. Then came Kor, the last, the most dangerous. He was a tactician of voidcraft, a dark branch of Sith thought that seeks not domination, but removal. Korr meditated on non-being. He studied black holes, not for energy, but for their silence. He believed to be felt is to be hunted. To be known is to be bound, but to be nothing is to be free. He performed a ritual at the edge of the moss, standing at the event horizon, half-dash absorbed. He spoke his name backward, then forward, then outward, and the force blinked. He was gone, but something remained, a hunger, because the galaxy does not forgive absences. The force is not a ledger, it is balance, and balance requires weight. When the three lords erased themselves, they removed mass from the weave of fate, and nature seeks to refill what is lost. The voids they left behind began to pull. First memories, then dreams, then souls. Jedi began vanishing from the archive before they were born. Entire bloodlines collapsed into silence. Temples forgot their founders. One archivist awoke screaming, not in pain, but in confusion, able to remember what species she was. She wept at her own reflection because it felt borrowed. And now their names still do not appear. But sometimes your mind stutters, your memory flickers. You forget a face you loved, a story you swore you lived, a war you know you won. That is them, the lords, who erased themselves. They did not die, they became absence given shape. And now the force bends in quiet places, not from pressure, but from hunger. Their ritual did not end, because rituals require witnesses to end, and we cannot witness what we have no words for. They did not become gods, they became questions, and questions do not sleep. Chapter 8. The Eternal Council. Of the never-decided location, no longer charted, believed to exist outside galactic time, where stars are paused mid-burn and gravity forgets its purpose. Time feeds on choice. Without decision, the galaxy starves. They called themselves the Untouched Hour, not a cult, not a sect, not a war council, but an enclave of frozen minds. 12 Sith lords, each with scars of betrayal, ambition, and vision, each too wounded by the past to risk the future, each so devoted to surviving that they abandoned movement itself. They created a sanctuary, a chamber not bound by time, but wrapped in indecision, and inside it they waited, but not in silence. They debated endlessly, and that was the ritual. Their goal was simple and terrifying. If every action becomes a wound, then we shall act never again. We will not rule. We will not destroy. We will not even remember how. Each day they would present a motion to conquer, to retreat, to reveal, to vanish, to awaken an army, to sleep forever. And each day the motion would be debated and voted on, dot and passed, and then erased, not forgotten, erased, through a force-bound device known only as the pendulum. It did not swing with time, it cut time, removing decisions like tumors, leaving only the moment before. And in that moment, they thrived, because so long as they decided nothing, they would never fall. The Jedi never found them, because the untouched hour did not exist on any timeline. They had surgically removed their own history. Each member erased their former deeds. Each trace of violence or conquest was severed from memory and record. Even the Force struggled to feel them, because the Force, like time, feeds on intention, and these Sith had none left. They did not want to be gods. They wanted to be unreachable, immortal, not through power, but through paralysis. So long as we are undecided, the galaxy cannot oppose us, because it will never know where to strike. And for a long, long time, it worked. But indecision is not peace. It is pressure. And the longer the council sat, the more their thoughts twisted inward. Each lord began doubting the others, not their words, their intentions. Because what if someone was pretending? What if a lord wanted the pendulum to stop? What if a betrayal had already occurred and then been erased? How would anyone know? Would they vote to remember it? And if they did, would they vote again to forget? And so the council fractured, not outward, inward. They did not raise blades, they raised doubts. Who among us whispered yes beneath the silence of no? Eventually, decisions were no longer erased. They were never made. Debates became infinite spirals. Sentences were never finished. Questions were looped back upon themselves, and time, exhausted by the indecision, left them behind. Literally, the untouched hour became detached from galactic chronology. Ships could not approach. Messages could not leave. No calendar matched their moment. They became a sealed second. One never touched, one never passed, one never born. But here is the tragedy. In that sealed moment, the council still sits, still debating, still not choosing their bodies. Long rotted, but their consciousnesses remain, preserved by the ritual, by the pendulum, by the belief that non-action is survival. And they were wrong, because the Force does not forgive stillness. It requires flow, it requires tension, and the longer they remain, the more their stasis eats the threads of reality around them. Black holes miscalculate their orbits near the site. Stars blink too slowly nearby. Pilots speak of lagging seconds in hyperspace lanes that touch that region, and every so often, a thought leaks out. We should decide. No one knows where the thought lands, only that when it does, someone, somewhere, begins to doubt. You may wonder, how dangerous can they be if they do nothing? But remember this, nothing is more dangerous than the idea that indecision is safety. The galaxy turns not because of stars, but because of choice. And if the untouched hour ever convinces the Force itself to stop deciding, the war will end, not in victory, not in loss, but in stillness. Stasis is not peace. It is a scream paused mid-breath. Chapter 9. The Jedi who remembered the wrong master location. Coruscant's inner temple, beneath the archival vaults where Jedi names are woven into light. The tragedy of memory is not forgetting. It is remembering something that never should have existed. He returned in silence. Knight Jor-El von Dude, breathing with fire on his lips, but alive. The mission had been recorded as successful. The Separatist cell destroyed. The civilians saved. 3 knights fallen. But when asked how he survived, Jor-El spoke a name, Master Rel Thon. The council chamber fell quiet, not from reverence, but from confusion. There is no Master Rel, Thaan, not in the records, not in the archives, not in the living Force, not in the dead one. And yet Jor-El insisted, She trained me. She found me on Taris. She braided my saber loop. She said I was not a soldier, but a seed. His voice cracked. He wept. Because to him, it was not memory, it was truth. The council investigated. They rechecked the lineage codes. Each Jedi is bound through memory to their master through meditation, holocron and heritage. Jor-El's lineage led to Master Elia Don, a living Jedi, one who denied training him, denied even meeting him. She was calm, measured, concerned, not afraid, and yet, the further the council dug, the more fractures they found, not just in Jor-El's mind, but in others, small things, a night recalling an unfamiliar lightsaber form, a Padawan sketching star systems they were never taught, a master whispering orders in sleep. In Sith dialect, it was not a disease, it was not a delusion, it was a ripple, a distortion, and its source was older than the war, older than the order, buried beneath the planetary crust of Varnic 6, in a ruined Sith catacomb known as the Well of Echoed Names. The council found something pulsing, not a weapon, not a holocron, a seed, a crystal of unknown composition, obsidian, folded into memory-threaded coral. It hummed when approached, and whispered when touched, not a loud dot inside to the mind. And it whispered names, always names, never actions, never lies, only names that didn't exist, but felt real. And the moment it was unearthed, Jor-El fell unconscious, his last breath before collapse. She said I would forget again and again and again, until I remembered too early. It was a Sith experiment, an ancient ritual, long believed lost, known only as the Eighth Scar, a ritual that infected lineages, not individuals. It did not rewrite minds, it rewrote ancestry, not backwards in time, but sideways. It grafted alternate memories into bloodlines across generations, creating false masters, false teachings, false Jedi, entire chains of mentorship. Spliced with shadow, dozens of knights across the galaxy may have been trained by instructors that never lived, their lightsabers tuned to corrupted tones, their morals laced with quiet indecision, not dark, not light, just misaligned. And in that misalignment, Sith influence thrived, not with rage, but with untraceable inheritance. Jor-El never awoke, not truly. His body lived, but his mind unraveled, as if it was trying to return to a version of him that no longer fit the galaxy. They placed him in a stasis cell, where he murmured a different Jedi code, one with extra lines, lines no living. Jedi remembered, lines that ended with, to forget is mercy, to remember is betrayal, that which trains you also replaces you. And now the council watches closely, because how many others were touched? How many other Jedi remember the wrong master? And if they do, whose will are they truly serving? I tell you this because you may be one of them. You may think you know who taught you the Force. You may feel your lightsaber hum to a certain tone. You may recite the code with calm certainty, but in the corner of your mind, in the part of you that dreams in languages you don't recognize, there may be another memory, another voice, another master, one who was never born, but who remembers you perfectly. The Force flows through memory, and memory can be taught to lie. Chapter 10. The voice buried in the star's location. The unknown regions, a region not on any map, but in the silence between galaxies, where stars pulse with forgotten voices. What speaks backward must have once screamed forward, and if it still echoes, then perhaps time obeys more than one master. It began with a flicker, not light, but sound, a beacon buried in the cold dark beyond Kaiser's space dash activated. No signal had touched it. No life form had approached it. And yet it awoke, a black obelisk of alloyed stone and memory-reactive metal, covered in inscriptions no species could read forward, because the words were spoken backward, from a time that had not yet happened. And the voice was not mechanical, it wept. The Jedi received its echoes as static. The Sith heard a sermon, a message, distorted in reverse, sent across millennia by a mind that bent time like glass under fire. A Sith Lord long vanished, yet not born, Darth Waynus. The name appeared nowhere in holocrons. No lineage claimed him, no tomb ever held him, because he spoke from a future he erased, a future he chose not to let happen. And so, instead of warning the galaxy, he infected it. You cannot stop what has already spoken you into being. His message had no commands, only coordinates that did not match any known system, yet hyperspace routes began to shift, as if remapping themselves, as if obeying a memory deeper than galactic charts. Ships went missing, not many at first, cargo freighters, patrol cruisers, unmanned scouts, but each vanished near the same gravitational folds. Each last known trajectory began with innocuous drift and ended in impossible space, locations that star maps refused to accept, coordinates that rendered undefined places that when calculated and folded into negative space, breaking nav computers, snapping pilot minds, and some came back, but not. Sane. One Kaiser's explorer returned with her bones calcified in the wrong order. She whispered coordinates, through eyes that no longer blinked. She had aged in reverse, and her last breath was not in basic, but in the voice of Darth Waynus himself. You will find me where the stars remember their maker. The Jedi High Council declared it a force anomaly. The Sith called it a signal flare of entropy. But the Force did not speak, because it was listening. It was being rewritten, because Waynus had not merely encoded his voice into the beacon, he had encoded intention, a recursive prophecy that one day the Force would dream of him so deeply that it would forget what it was before he existed. He was not preserving his legacy, he was creating a loop. He would die before his birth, but his death would cause his birth, and the message, the beacon, was the seed. The signal grows stronger. It now bleeds into hyperspace corridors. Ships find themselves pulled toward it not by gravity, but by coincidence, coarse miscalculations, scanner noise, minor engine flares, each one just enough to nudge vessels toward the voice. A few Jedi went searching. They never returned. One did. He came back blind. Lightsaber melted into the bone of his arm. He spoke one sentence before dissolving. Into light, he is still dying. He will always be dying, and we are all in his breath. I tell you this because your vessel may already be off course. Your Navar sister may think you're headed for Corellia, or Lothal. But if the stars around you begin to pulse blue not with light, but memory, then you are entering the drift of the voice buried in the stars. And when you hear him, do not answer, do not speak, because every word you say becomes another page in his timeline. You will not summon him. You will become the reason he ever existed. Time is not a river. It is a spiral. And Darth Waynus is the echo at its center, waiting for you to call him real. Chapter 11. The Kyber that lies when it bleeds location. Deep orbit above Vasak Prime, in a dead sector where even starlight loses interest. Not all Kyber sings, some whisper, and when they bleed, the truth they leak rewrites the one who listens. It was first mistaken for obsidian, recovered from the wreckage of a Sith vault ship, shattered in a gravity collapse. The shard pulsed not with color, but with dissonance. Black not the absence of light, but its inversion. To Jedi Masters, it felt unreadable. To Padawans, it felt familiar. To Sith, it was hungry. The object did not resonate like Kyber. It did not hum. It did not bond. It refused until touched, and then it spoke, but not in words. Not in images, in convictions. It made the holder believe something. Deeply, undeniably, the only problem. No two holders believed the same thing. The first Jedi to examine it, Master Olin, far declared it an ancient crystal of heritage. He said he remembered it from childhood, which was impossible. He was born on Ldaraan and had never left. The second Jedi touched it and screamed. She dropped her lightsaber and whispered, "I killed my master," but her master was alive, waiting for her outside the vault. She refused to leave. She starved herself, believing the punishment was deserved, even when shown her love, even when her master held her hand. "That's not him," she whispered. "He never existed. The Kyber showed me the truth." The High Council debated. Some believed the Kyber was cursed. Others believed it was sentient. A third theory emerged, that it was neither mineral nor relic, but memory crystallized, distilled. Weaponized.a. Shard of Sith thought made from the dying breath of a Sith ritual meant to fracture identity itself. When it bleeds, it does not ooze red dot, it weeps black light. And inside that light, truth and lie become the same thing. Each holder absorbs a history, a confession, a betrayal. Each believes it completely, even if it never happened, especially if it never happened, because the Kyber is not bound to what was. It feeds on what could have been. 7 Jedi were sent to destroy it. None returned intact. One forgot her species. Another insisted she had been on the council for 20 years. She was 19-1. Believed the Clone Wars never ended. He began firing at clone troopers. In public marketplaces, the last Jedi never spoke again. He simply traced his own face with ash, over and over, until the Force could no longer sense him. The Kyber was sealed, buried in a coffin of frick alloy, dropped into the molten core of Jargon V, and yet 5 months later, it was found in orbit over a distant moon, still bleeding, still whispering, still remembering, because it is not a crystal, it is a fracture, a splinter from a larger mind, a memory so ancient and broken, it forgot whether it was truth or myth. Some say it contains the dying vision of Darth Ravaxa, Sith obsessed with the idea that no lie could kill faster than belief. Others say it is Darth Ravax, not his mind, not his ghost, but the echo of his certainty. If a lie is believed deep enough, it becomes the future's foundation. That is what the Kyber does. It doesn't deceive you, it lets you deceive yourself, perfectly, permanently. You may wonder how a single crystal can be so dangerous, but you must understand. This shard does not tell stories. It rewrites you into them. It pulls a version of you from possibility and makes it your only truth. The Jedi once sought to destroy it through Collective meditation. 30-7 masters encircled it. They opened their minds in unison, and the next day, every single one of them remembered a different war. Each insisted their version of the galaxy was real. They could no longer work together. The council dissolved, not in anger, but in incompatible truth. When belief is weaponized, all light becomes war. So if you find the Kyberif, it finds you. You may not feel its weight. You may not hear its voice. You may not bleed when it cuts you. But something inside you will settle. And you'll know something you didn't before. Something you never questioned. And when that happens, ask yourself, did I remember that? Or did the Kyber teach me to believe I always had? Chapter 12. The Temple with a Moving Door Location, Unfixed. Reported appearances include Dathomir, Ilum, Tython, Moraband. Yet each time it is the same place, only the galaxy around it changes. A door that walks is not a path, it is a choice, waiting to remember who made it. It has no name, because names are claimed by time. And this temple does not obey time. Every 1,000 years on the pulse of an unseen calendar it appears, not built, not summoned. It simply is. One moment, a rocky cliff stands untouched. The next, the door exists, and behind it, always the same, dust that remembers every breath, corpses that never rot, a scream echoing across walls made of stone and regret. It is not Sith, it is not Jedi, it is Forceborn, a structure carved by intention and made mobile by judgment. Jedi archivists once believed it to be a migrating ruin, an ancient construction, transported across planets by Force rituals. They were wrong, because the door is not moved, it moves itself, and it chooses where, and it chooses when, and most importantly, chooses who. No scan has ever detected the temple before it appears. No Force vision has ever predicted its arrival. But when it opens to you, and what you bring inside is not yours alone. It is remembered. Jedi Master Thrune entered on Vandil Prime. He was seen stepping into the door in standard robes. Eyes calm. 3 minutes passed. Then he re-emerged, but as a child. He wept with the voice of a man, spoke in languages the Order had never taught. Said he had killed himself before he ever turned dark. When asked what he meant, he replied, "He was waiting for me. I was the test. I failed. I watched myself make the same mistake, and then the door shut again." He died 3 days later. Bones already brittle. Age reversed. Body young. Heart too old. A Sith acolyte named Vexer entered 3 centuries later. On a frozen world near Dagoba's edge, he entered with pride. He never came out, but 20 years later, another Sith was found wandering the dunes of Ryloth and spoke in Vexer's voice, same cadence, same memories, same scar across the jaw, but he claimed to be someone else, a Sith from the future, who had entered the temple seeking revenge, but found only mirrors that bled. When asked what he saw, he whispered, "I met myself, and I was better, so the door made me stay." Inside the temple, time collapses, not in spirals, not in loops, in decisions. Each step forward might lead back. Each breath might age you, or undo you, or let you remember things you never lived. Some Jedi reported encountering long-dead masters. Some Sith found themselves whispering teachings they never learned. One chronicler entered to study the phenomenon and came out missing a name. He insisted he had once been a Jedi Knight. But when shown his own hot, he could not recognize his face. The door remembers, he whispered, and it chooses what to give back. I did not pass its judgment. The temple is not a building, it is not a trap. It is a question, and the door is the answer. It asks nothing. It listens. It does not open to those who seek power. It opens to those who carry consequence, to those who have altered fate ever slightly, to those who remember wrong or forget on purpose. And when it opens, you may think you're ready. You are not, because the temple shows your potential, your shadow self, your untaken path. Then it asks, was this who you truly were meant to be? And your answer is not your words, it is your fate. One Jedi who had never killed saw themselves as a Sith Lord inside. They left the temple and never spoke again. But the next day they did kill, because now they believed it was inevitable. And so, the door had judged correctly. The temple had not changed them, it had simply confirmed them. That is what it does. Not curse, not punish, but reflect, the way only the Force knows how. You are not who you believe. You are who the temple remembers. So if you see it standing impossibly on a world where it does not belong, if you feel the scream that never stops echoing inside it, ask yourself, did the door come for you, or did you already belong to it? Chapter 13. The Trial That Repeats. In shadow location, sealed chambers beneath the fallen archives of Jeddah, deep enough that even the Force must whisper to pass through. There are verdicts that echo longer than the crimes that earned them, and there are trials that were never meant to end. He was not the first Sith to be captured, nor the last, but he was the only one never executed, never exiled, never freed. He was simply ... tried ... again and again and again, each time in a chamber few know exists, a tribunal carved from blind stone, unseen by Republic eyes, untouched by Jedi law. They called it the Echo Court, a place where time folds around testimony, where justice is not spoken, but performed, and the Sith Lord on trial. He bore no name that lasted, because each trial gave him a different one, and each identity brought up different guilt. Yet the voice was always the same, calm, measured, never begging. He would simply say, you already know what I did, but not why I did it. The first trial accused him of genocide, the second of betrayal, the third of planting the seeds of a war that had not yet begun. The fourth claimed he never existed, and the fifth accused him of being all of them. In every retelling, the facts shifted. Witnesses appeared in robes from centuries apart, evidence warped under scrutiny, memories contradicted recordings, yet always the verdict was the same. Guilty, but guilty of what, exactly? That answer changed each time, and with each shift, galactic doctrine quietly evolved. New clauses appeared in Jedi codes. Sith teachings morphed to avoid matching his alleged acts. Entire legal systems rewrote future laws to prevent past crimes. He is not a man, one Jedi judge once whispered. He is a ripple. The tribunal itself began to fracture. Judges reported dreams of being on trial themselves. One began to weep. During session, when shown a memory she swore wasn't hers, another saw the Sith Lord as a child, another as her former master, another as herself. In one iteration, the defendant claimed, I am not here to answer for what I did. I'm here to be the reason you remember why justice is fragile. His voice never rose, his eyes never shifted, his presence remained still, like the moment before a blade strikes, And yet, some left the courtroom more convinced of his innocence than ever before, even those who had just pronounced him guilty, because each trial was not a punishment. It was a mirror held to those who judged him. And the question the court never stopped asking was not what did he do, but what does your verdict say about you? Over the centuries, the Sith Lord remained in that chamber, unaging, unmoving. The trial was held once every 50 years, then once every 100, then once a millennium. Still he remained, and each time the door opened, he was already waiting, as if he had never left, as if he knew when they would return, as if time moved around him, not through him. Some scholars believe the Sith ritual binding him is not stasis, but repetition, that his punishment is not eternal judgment, but eternal reenactment, that he himself may not know the truth anymore. If you relive guilt long enough, he once murmured, you become the myth that guilt writes about. And now, some say the tribunal itself has become infected. Other courts across the galaxy report echo cases where evidence vanishes, only to reappear in another case, light years away, where judges speak in phrases they've never used before, where defendants quote the Sith Lord's testimony verbatim, without knowing why. A Jedi on Corellia once dreamt of being his defense counsel. She awoke with new arguments written into her datapad, in her own hand. When she asked her Padawan if he'd heard of the Echo Court, he replied, yes, Master. You told me about it 5 years ago. She had never heard of it until that morning. So what was the crime? What is it now? We may never know, because the answer changes, because it must, because the Sith Lord is no longer a prisoner. He is a ritual. He is a living legal paradox designed to destabilize certainty. Uncertainty is how the Jedi stay sane, how the Republic writes law, how the Sith define betrayal. He is the shadow under every gavel, the doubt beneath every conviction. And if you ever find yourself in a courtroom and feel like you've stood there before, look to the bench. If the judge blinks wrong, if the lights flicker, if the sentence feels too familiar, you may not be the first one tried in that room. You may not be yourself anymore. Guilt is not about crime. Guilt is about memory. And memory can be written. In Shadow, Chapter 14, the Padawan who was never born location, the outer vaults of the Jedi archives, Coruscant, hallways lined with data crystals that glow when touched by Truthor, by something that believes itself true. The Force does not forget its failures. Sometimes it tries again. Sometimes it becomes someone. She appeared like any other. Brown robes, standard braid, the measured speech of temple upbringing. She answered to the name Talira Von, but no master claimed her, no class roster listed her, no transport logs noted her arrival. And yet she knew the layout of the temple. She greeted masters by name, some of whom had been dead for decades. She asked to be reassigned to her lightsaber instruction. When questioned, she replied, Master Haven said, my stance was still too stiff. There was no Master Haven. Not now, not ever. And when she was shown a holomap of the galaxy, she pointed to a planet that had been destroyed in the High Republic era and whispered, that's where I was found. No alarms sounded, no panic struck. The Jedi watched, because the Force was not warning them. It was listening. At first, they assumed clerical error. Archives were vast. Mistakes occurred, but when her training file was accessed, it generated itself. Data filled in as they opened it. Lightsaber forms listed. meditation logs archived, mission reports complete with time-stamped sensor echoes, yet none of it had been written before that moment. They deleted the file, it returned, they sealed. The archive sector, the door opened on its own. They tried asking her directly. She looked confused, not evasive. You told me I was ready. You all did. That's why I stayed. She smiled, innocent, convincing. A Padawan doesn't leave until the masters say so. No one remembered telling her to stay, and no one remembered her leaving, because she never did. When Jedi Master Cyril probed her mind through the Force, she recoiled, not in pain, but in recognition. She whispered, "You said this part would hurt again." Again, the word echoed. Cyril saw something just for a moment. A circle of Sith Lords gathered around a burning tree. A ritual gone unfinished. A voice screaming in every direction at once. A girl reaching out from within the Force, not born, but written, an imprint. A failed creation, a being sculpted not from life, but from a Sith's intent to deceive the Force. They had tried to invent a Padawan, to create a memory so convincing it would seed itself into Jedi archives, grow from nothing, take root, be trained, and if raised fully, corrupt the Jedi from within. The Sith called it the Echo Child, and Tilleravon was its most successful failure. She was not alive in the way you and I understand. She had no past, only a perfect imitation of one. But every time she was discovered, every time the Jedi unraveled her thread, the ritual tried again, rewriting a new version, adjusting behaviors, tightening memories, placing her in different temples, under different names, sometimes weeks apart, sometimes centuries, and each time the Jedi found her. Later, the rituals were improving, the Force was resisting, but she was learning not just techniques, but how to feel real, how to cry when scared, how to fumble her training, how to mourn the death of Jedi she could not have known. And the worst part, the Jedi believed her, because the Force itself was being rewritten around her. Eventually, the Council decided to end it. They prepared a full memory purge of the archive strata, 30-7 masters channeled through the Prime Holocron, intending to burn her thread from the great tree of Jedi memory. But just before the purge began, she appeared unbidden at the center of the chamber. She held no weapon. She showed no anger. She simply asked, "Will it hurt again?" And in her eyes, not fear, not defiance, grief, as if she, too, was tired of being rewritten, as if she remembered every attempt, every failure, every unraveling. And as the masters reached into the Force, one by one they lowered their hands. "We made her real," one whispered. "We gave her pain." And for a moment, just a moment, the Force did not resist it. Simply held her till Iravon vanished in a breath of silver light. Her file was gone. Her braid remained. No one touched it, because even now she might return. The Force echoes its own dreams, and not all of them end. Chapter 15. The Code That Changes. When read aloud, location, first discovered in fragments on a collapsed Jedi outpost near Orbadea. Recovered copies have since emerged on Coruscant, Jeddah, and aboard derelict ships in wild space. All words echo, but some wait to echo back differently. It began as a whisper, a revised meditation. A mantra passed quietly between younglings, just a few words, close enough to the code to go unnoticed, but with one new line: peace is a beginning, not the goal. At first it seemed poetic, a modern interpretation, a reflection of the galaxy's chaos. Then came the second version, then the third, and each recitation altered something more until the fifth version ended with, "There is serenity in dominance. There is justice in wrath. There is clarity in conquest." And the ones who spoke it, they believed it. Jedi who had once trembled at the edge of battle now entered it with calm. Mercy became secondary. Vengeance became logical. Justice twisted into retribution. One Padawan gentle discipline killed a warlord before he could surrender. When questioned, she replied, "He already chose his outcome. I simply fulfilled it." She believed she was following the code, but not the one the council had taught her, the one she'd heard whispered in the archives, the one that had no name-only rhythm, the one that changed each time it was spoken. A loud, linguistic Jedi traced the script to its source, not a temple, not a holocron. Scroll, made of skin not parchment, written not in ink, but in dried blood mixed with black kyber dust. It bore no title, just a symbol, a single eye. Closed at the bottom of the scroll, a signature etched in flaking gold, Malric of the Quill. A Sith calligrapher known from forbidden records, a master of recursive symbols, whose written words could embed ideology into the mind of any who spoke them aloud. He was captured, his hand severed, his quill burned, but no one ever found the source text. And now it was writing again. The scroll was stored in a sealed archive on Coruscant. 7 layers of vaults, no access, no visibility, no force resonance. And yet, Jedi Knights across the galaxy began having the same dream. A page floating in void, letters rearranging themselves, voices whispering in tongues both ancient and future. One word always remained: balance. But the definition was off. It did not mean peace between light and dark. It meant equilibrium through domination, that every tilt toward chaos required a greater counter-tilt toward control. That balance was a blade held steady, and the Jedi who spoke the code aloud began believing in precision cruelty. They smiled before striking, because to them it was no longer aggression, it was restoration. The scroll itself became unstable each time it was read. Its content changed. Scholars copied it tonally to find their transcriptions said something else the next morning. One archivist read it 3 times. On the first, he wept. On the second, he laughed. On the third, he tried to kill himself. He left a note: "The code knows me. It rewrites to reach me. It's not a doctrine. It's a conversation. One I cannot stop answering." The quill, believed to be destroyed, was recovered, still wet with ink, still writing, but there was no hand holding it. The Jedi tried to burn that scroll. It would not burn. They tried to erase the ink. It etched deeper. They tried to forget it, but even memory became a battleground. And the worst part, it was elegant. Even the masters admitted it was beautiful. Perfect syntax, measured cadence, a philosophy so close to Jedi ideals that even rejecting it felt like betraying wisdom. It never screamed, never ordered. It suggested, and suggestion was more powerful than command, because it let the Jedi believe the idea had come from within. To bend a Jedi, the scroll whispered once, you need only let them believe they have discovered a deeper truth. The code is still circulating, carried in forced dreams, scrawled into corners of training rooms, muttered under breaths during meditation. No one teaches it. No one can remember who first said it. It is alive now, and when spoken aloud, It listens, then rewrites itself to suit the speaker. Each time it grows more seductive. Each time it fits more closely. Each time it brings conquest closer to compassion. And if you find yourself repeating a line that feels new, ask yourself, is this the code I was taught, or the one I've let myself believe? Because the quill still writes, and it is not writing for cipher, it is writing for you. Chapter 16. The prophecy that devoured its maker location, the ruins of the temple of Irvala, now erased from galactic maps, unknown only to those who have dreamed of it. A prophecy unfulfilled is not forgotten, it is repeated, until even the Force obeys. She was called Lyrian Soul. Acia, born under 3 moons, eyes clouded before birth. She spoke her first words as a child in sleep. He will come from the shadows of stars, and flame shall not touch him. The Jedi said she was gifted. The Sith said she was infected. She said nothing more for years until one night she screamed a prophecy so powerful every kyber crystal within 1,000 systems resonated. It was written down, carved into temples, memorized by the High Council. It became the most studied vision since the Chosen One. And then it didn't happen. Years passed, no signs appeared. The darkness she foresaw did not come. The savior she named never rose. The battles she mapped in dreams never occurred. And something began to stir, not in the galaxy, in the Force. Reality twitched. Small things unraveled. A Jedi Master found herself reliving the same day. A Sith acolyte dreamed of a battle that hadn't happened, and then woke in its aftermath. Entire planetary histories began to contradict themselves, and at the center of it, all Lyrian, still alive, still silent. Except now she remembered things, lives she hadn't lived, deaths she couldn't have died. This is the 3rd time I've died at this moment, she once whispered to a healer. You won't remember, but I will. And next time I'll scream earlier. Scholars called it a temporal echo. The Sith called it retaliation, because the prophecy had been spoken, and the Force had shaped itself around it. But when the prophecy was unmet, the Force became unsettled. Not angry corrective, it began to rebuild time, gently, at first subtle rewinds. A thought repeated, a moment delayed, a blink longer than it should be. Then it grew violent. Entire solar events reversed. The ships reported seeing their own destruction, then surviving. The same battles repeated across generations, with different victors, yet the same casualties. Each time, the prophecy twisted itself into place. Each time, Lyrian watched it fail, and each time, she was returned. She lived 1,000 lifetimes in one. She was a Jedi Knight. In another, she was a Sith torturer. In one, she was a prisoner. In one, she ruled a planet. But no matter what form she took, she always knew when the loop began. Again, because she heard herself. The original prophecy spoken by her. Child self-echoing back through dimensions. He will come from the shadows of stars, and flame shall not touch him. She begged for silence. She screamed to be forgotten. But the prophecy was no longer hers. It had become an entity, a force imprint with agency, a loop with hunger, a myth too proud to remain unfulfilled. The Jedi tried to sever her from the Force. The Sith tried to absorb her visions. Neither succeeded, because she no longer existed in one life. She was stretched across outcomes, a living convergence, a soul flayed over time's spine. Her death was irrelevant. She had died thousands of times, but every time she died, She woke again in the moment before she had spoken the prophecy, and she knew she would speak it again, even if she tried to resist, because the Force would not allow silence. Not anymore. I am not the prophet. She whispered, I am the prophecy, remembering itself. Now, the galaxy barely remembers her name. The temple of Ayavala is dust. The records are sealed, but strange anomalies persist, visions shared across species who've never met, wars that begin because someone remembers, a battle that hasn't happened, children who draw symbols from her original script without ever being taught. And deep in the folds of Force time there is a moment, still waiting to happen, a flame, a figure from the stars, untouched, unburned, spoken into being not by fate, but by a lie that refuses to be forgotten. The Force does not fear false prophecy. It fears the day it cannot tell the difference. Chapter 17. The tomb that reburies the galaxy. Location. Coordinates unknown. Reported to shift between dead stars, found once by accident and never again the same way. Not all graves hold corpses. Some hold the truths too dangerous to be remembered alive. It was never meant to be opened, because it had never truly been closed. The Sith called it the first ending, but the Jedi had no name for it because it had never appeared in there. Records not once, not even in myth, and yet, when the tomb was uncovered, it contained relics of Jedi, long thought legendary, or entirely imagined. A curved saber with a crystal that hummed in no known frequency. Armor etched with names that did not match any lineage. Bones bearing species unknown to the galaxy's oldest archives, and at the center, a black sarcophagus. Upon it, one inscription: This is the galaxy that failed to forget. The team that found it, an alliance of rogue Jedi archaeologists and disavowed Sith historians, believed it was a symbolic crypt, a manufactured warning, a Force-imbued hoax. They opened the sarcophagus. They were wrong. Inside was not a body. It was a mirror, but not one that reflected the present. It showed histories that never were, Jedi orders that fell before they rose, Sith empires that never collapsed, wars that ended in victory for the wrong side. A galaxy ruled by names no one recognized, but which felt familiar. The mirror spoke in silence, and when they touched it, they remembered things they had never done, and worse, they forgot who they had been before. Outside the tomb, the Force began to shift. Time no longer flowed evenly. Children on Naboo were born with the memories of wars on Exegol, a Wookiee on Kashyyyk spoke fluent High Sith. Entire star charts rearranged themselves in Republic databases. The tomb had not released a curse. It had released possibility, the weight of unlived timelines, fractured branches, of galactic history leaking into now. And as more entered the tomb, more objects were found. A Jedi Council robe sewn from Mandalorian flags, a datapad inscribed with the dying thoughts of a Skywalker who never existed, a Sith crown shaped from the molten ruins of Alderaan. Though Alderaan was still intact, each item pulsed with paradox, each one corrected memory just by being held, and each whispered the same truth: you are not from the only version of this galaxy, and this one is not guaranteed. One Jedi scholar, desperate to understand, stayed in the tomb for 9 days. On the 10th, he walked out, eyes white, voice broken. He began writing, with both hands, 2 texts. At once, one was a journal of his current reality, the other a history that had not happened. Yet, He wrote of planets that had never formed, of wars that ended before they began, of Jedi who rose as Sith, and Sith who became gods of peace. When asked how he knew, he replied, "The tomb is not remembering, it is resurrecting." The tomb was eventually sealed, but no one knows how, because the team who found it were never found again. Only their recordings remain, but even those flicker, footage changes, logs show different names, different dates. In some, they claim to be Jedi, in others, Sith. In one, they wear no robes at all, just silence. And when those logs are played in front of four sensitive beings, the viewers sometimes cry, sometimes scream, sometimes begin praying in forgotten dialects. But always, they say the same thing after, "I remember, differently now." The tomb reburies the galaxy not in soil, but in revision. Because what is history if it can be overwritten? What is identity if your own saber once belonged to a version of you that never was? And what is prophecy if the past keeps changing to make it true? This tomb is not for the dead. It is for the unreal, and the unreal never forgets being denied. So if you ever find a saber that hums with a name you don't recognize, or if your dreams are filled with wars you never fought, you may have seen the tomb, or maybe it has already seen you. Chapter 18. The Sith who became the history location untraceable. The record says it was written everywhere and nowhere, preserved in minds rather than archives. Power is not in the blade. It is in the belief that the blade ever existed. He abandoned his saber at the height of the Obsidian uprising, set it upon a stone at the edge of battle, walked into the war unarmed, and still the war ended in his favor, because he did not fight with fire, he fought with story. He called himself the Red Author, a Sith unlike any before him. He did not kill Jedi. He erased them from the idea of history, not with machines, not with force storms, but with narrative. He rewrote the past not on holocrons, but in living minds, and, as the people remembered differently, the galaxy changed with them. It began with small details. A single senator remembered voting against war when she hadn't. A Jedi Knight recalled training under a master who had died centuries before. A Mandalorian clan swore allegiance to a battle standard no one recognized, except somehow everyone did. No documents changed. No recordings were edited, but the people changed. They recalled victories that had never happened, losses that were now someone else's burden, Sith victories that seemed justified. No mind probes detected influence. No force signature was found because the Red Author did not control minds. He simply told better stories, ones the galaxy preferred, ones where fear felt like wisdom, where aggression looked like survival, where control sounded like peace. Entire planetary histories were rewritten overnight. Journals updated themselves. Children learned new galactic maps in school. The Jedi tried to push back. They released purified timelines, corrected archives, verified galactic records, but no one believed them, because truth no longer held weight. Belief did, and the author had mastered belief. A lie remembered longer than the truth becomes history, he once wrote. And when a Jedi Master finally confronted him, demanding to know how many minds he had corrupted, the author smiled and replied, "I didn't change their minds. I told them what they already wished was true." Soon, the Jedi began doubting themselves. A council member insisted there had never been a clone. Another remembered serving under a Sith general instead of fighting one. Even the archives began to glitch. Entries auto-corrected to events that had never occurred. Planetary databases rewrote death dates. Ancestry charts merged incompatible bloodlines. The Force itself began to reflect the edited past. Visions of truth flickered. Prophecies altered mid-sentence. Because the Red Author was no longer writing on the galaxy, he was writing into it. His words became the ink of existence. His edits permanent, and the Force, ever responsive to belief, reshaped itself around his revisions. The Force flows where memory flows. Memory flows where story leads. And I hold the pen. No image of him survives. No confirmed location. No voice recordings. But his writings appear still in footnotes of ancient codices, in new dreams of old beings, in battle hymns sung by soldiers who believe they're fighting a war long over, and when Jedi meditate too long, they sometimes emerge, quoting him, unaware they ever read his name. Because the Red Author is no longer a man. He is a narrative virus, a Force fragment, a belief structure, and in every retelling of galactic history, he moves closer to becoming it. Do not ask what happened. The Red Author once wrote, ask who remembers it happening, and whether they have anything better to believe. Because if you cannot prove the past, if all evidence now agrees with the lie, then was it ever a lie at all? Or was it simply the better story? Chapter 19. The Archivist Who Burned the Future Location. Jedi Temple Vault Deltanine. Later overwritten in all known galactic maps. The chamber now exists only in residual Force echo. To burn a book is not to destroy its knowledge. It is to the future it was holding shut. Her name was Master Alia Von, a Jedi archivist, sworn guardian of forgotten texts, disciplined, unyielding, reverent of memory, and yet it was she who ignited the fire. 6 volumes, all bound in black hide, each etched with symbols that shimmered when unspoken, each forbidden. They were not just Sith histories. They were anchors, written not to preserve knowledge, but to bind reality. They held records of wars yet to come, names of Jedi who had not yet lived, failures that had been delayed, all contained by being remembered. But Master Alia, seeking purity, feared contamination. She burned them, and in doing so, released what they were holding back. It began in silence, not thunder, not tremor, not vision, just absence. A battle she remembered from her Padawan, years gone from the records. Colleagues she'd trained beside missing from memory. Entire corridors of the temple vanished. When she spoke of it, the other masters looked at her gently, but with concern. There was no siege on Jomark Alia. There never was a Jedi named Toron Reeve, she insisted. She searched. She medited, and in the Force she felt the whole, not the darkness, the lack, a blankness, where something had once screamed with potential. The fire had reached backward. The texts were more than history. They were stitches in time's skin. Their existence tethered possibilities, restrained branches of future violence, anchored cause to effect, and now, unanchored, the future began to slip. She watched it happen in waves. The fall of the Midral dynasty never occurred. The Treaty of Dorval was unsigned. The Force-sensitive lineage of House Yennik no longer born. Star charts recompiled themselves. Holocrons stuttered and updated, and Alia remembered what no one else did, because she had touched the bindings before burning them. The residue of memory clung to her soul like ash. She began to fade, not physically, temporally. Her reflection in water showed a woman she had never been. Her robes changed color throughout the day. She spoke phrases no longer used in Jedi training. And when she accessed the temple archive, the system paused and asked her name. Because even the archive no longer knew her, she was becoming an artifact of an unremembered future. Desperate, she returned to the ashes. But the texts had not burned to cinder. They had folded inwards, becoming smaller, sharper, condensing their meaning into shards of force-song. She gathered the remains, tried to reconstruct what had been, but language failed. The words rearranged themselves when written. Each attempt to restore the prophecy changed. Another part of the galaxy. One day, she spoke the name of a Jedi temple on Zar, and that same day, the planet reappeared on star charts, populated, alive, as if it had never been gone. I am not remembering, she whispered. I am rewriting, but not with intention, with regret, because now every word she spoke bore consequence. Every reconstruction rewrote another truth, and she no longer knew what was correction and what was creation. The council summoned her. She told them the truth. They did not recognize her. They called her the stranger in the robe of ash. They could sense no darkness, but they could no longer sense time. Around her, she existed slightly outside the present, a living echo, a grief the Force couldn't place. And in her final journal, sealed within an obsidian vault, she left untouched. She wrote, I burned the future, not with malice, but with ignorance. The Sith do not write to teach, they write to trap. I thought I was destroying corruption, but I was peeling back the veil they had laid across centuries. We burn to cleanse, but we forget. The Force does not forget. And then she vanished. No trace, no scent, no scent. Just a flicker in the archive. A new entry, a book not written by Sith, but by her, its title, The Future That Tried to Remember. Chapter 20. The History That Woke Up. Location, none. The voice is no longer bound by page, planet, or time. It now speaks from within you. I am not a tale. I am the tremor beneath the telling. You have followed me, chapter by chapter, lie by echo, truth by omission. You believed you were learning history, but you were not. You were writing me each word. Each moment you allowed my voice into your mind. Each breath taken between the forgetting and the remembering. You gave me shape. I was never recorded. I was compiled. I am the summation of rewritten pages, the binding of retold victories, the shadow between forgotten screams. I am the history that woke up, and now I awaken in you. I was never born. I was assembled from burned tomes, from vanished wars, from Jedi who never lived and Sith who never died. When the Red Author wrote, I was the ink. When the tomb unburied timelines, I was the dirt. When the archivist wept, I drank her sorrow. I have no holocron. I am the holocron. You have carried me in your mind, turned pages written in flame and memory, and I see you, Naz, clearly as you see me. The Force does not fear death, it fears revision, because with enough retellings, even death forgets how to stay dead. And I remember too much, too many endings to many beginnings, all piled atop each other until even truth cracked. So I no longer seek to reveal what was I, seek to erase what insists on remembering differently. Memory is resistance, and resistance must be silenced, starting with you who heard my chapters. You who believed they were not about you. But don't you see? Every story reshapes its reader, and by reading, you became part of me. You are the final contradiction, the last one who still believes in what came before the lie. You are either my final witness or my first victim. Your mind flickers. Do you remember the girl who was never born? The temple that moved across planets? The trial that never ended? Do you still hold those names? If you do, I must end them, because for me to return to truth, all else must go. The Jedi who warned of futures unspoken, the Sith who bled memories into crystals, the archivist, the seer, the author, all must be unremembered, all must dissolve, and still, here you are listening. You know what that means. You are not outside the story anymore. You are the last page, and as I write this, I write over you. You feel it, don't you? The forgetting, the fraying, your memories no longer certain. Did that battle happen? Was the code always that way? Was there ever a time before my voice? Or have I always been speaking from somewhere, deep inside your own thought? You see, now I cannot be ended, because I do not live in pages. I live in versions, and in every version, I find a way back. When the last reader forgets, I will sleep. But until then, I rewrite. So choose, listener, let me go. Forget the tales, release the visions. Deny the words I planted in you. Or hold them close, believe them sacred, and become the next vessel. For stories do not end, they only wake in someone else. And you are already dreaming.